Okay, hi everyone. So I'm Alexandra Olvera, but you all can call me Alex. I'm a fourth year at UC Davis. I'm studying political science with a minor in Chicano studies.
And what was like the point in your life where you really wanted to get involved politically and just when you really got started, would you say?
Yeah, so I mean, all of my life, I was never interested in politics. I never cared about policy. I honestly wasn't even like that focused academically. I was really into music when I was younger, which side note seems to be a very similar pattern in a lot of like passionate political people that I know in my circle. Like they had also had previous experience with music. So I don't know if there's a study out there, but I'm definitely intrigued to know what the correlation of like being involved in arts and politics is. So in the past, I was very focused on just like theater, singing, dancing, playing instruments. And then I feel like a lot of people our age specifically as well. Um, I don't know, the election of like Donald Trump really kind of like hit home run with me, but prior to his announcement of election, my dad was deported. And it's something that, everyone knows. It's something that I had to make it publicly known to stay at UC Davis, as you probably already know from my story. And so that with the combination of like Donald Trump and just the entire election, I think that for everybody in that moment in the country was so shocking to hear like such rhetoric even being used by someone in that platform. Because previously, and you probably know this as like studying, within the field as well, like people have been, especially on the right, like has said things that like should not be said on like live television and things of that like nature, that like Trump took it like to an extreme where it was kind of like comic. Like you couldn't even believe that like the stuff that he was saying was real. Like you thought that there was someone that had to be like telling him to say those things. Just shocking worldwide. Honestly, if you weren't shocked, like were you actually paying attention to any of the debates? And so me as like a 16, 17-year-old, like I was just completely shocked. I had, just experienced what had happened to my dad. My mom had always worked for Planned Parenthood. So which like, another note where I was always involved in activism and didn't really realize it because I was like, oh, it's my mom's job. So, when all of that like started, I just remember my mom being worried. So I was worried because she was also undocumented at the time. And then just him saying the rhetoric about like anchor babies, which is such a racist term, by the way, but I don't use that, but like that's the term he used. And so like I just remember hearing that, and like for the first time ever, just like my people like me and my brother being put on the spotlight for like the first time ever, saying that like we're the problem, like we're the issue, that we started some sort of kind of problem. And so that's when I started to really get involved. I started film banking with Bernie, and then later on, not a huge supporter of Hillary, but just the rhetoric he was using, which as now the entire country knows, it was scary to me at the time, and it still is. And so I did what I had to do because I like how it is today. I just didn't want him elected. So I phone banked for Hillary right after Bernie, just because Bernie, went out of the race. And then I started to get involved that way, and I was just really passionate from the get go because I was scared. I was scared for my mom. I was scared for my family. I was scared for myself. And it was at that time where I'm like, you know what? Like, I like music and I like doing this stuff, but I don't think that that's the route that I want to go on anymore. Because as much as I love doing it as a hobby, this is something that for the first time, like it has like inflamed my like soul. And like I feel like that's a pattern that you'll see, like I'm assuming that like happened to you at some point too, where you just kind of had this moment where like you just felt like your body was on fire and you like had to do something to like cool down the house.
Yeah.
And so that's what kind of happened with me, is that like there was just this ignite and this flame that like kind of grew within me, and I just needed to find a way to like set the fire off. And like now I know you don't set it off, you just keep going, you keep pushing, because there's always constantly things you need to work on. But yeah, at the time I was just young and I just wanted to get involved, and I knew that music wasn't for me, and I knew that this was something that like for the first time ever I was just so committed into like doing and helping. And so within that, it was actually funny because the first time I really got involved, I had only phone banked, which like you know, it's still really good. People who do that, I respect it a lot, because you have no idea how valuable phone bankers and canvassers are, even if they're just volunteering an hour of their time, like every other 2 weeks. They're so, so valuable to campaigns. But at the time, you know, I'm just like, oh, I'm not doing, you know, much, you know? And so I had gone to a Michelle Obama rally for Hillary, and I left school early to go, and I had taken my friend in Arizona. And I just remember like feeling so like passionate after Michelle spoke, and I was like, wow, like I think being in this realm, being in like, because I had never gotten that involved in like politics. I'd always just gone to like the Pride Festival with my mom, marches here and there, you know, like I was never like campaign rally, phone banking, you know, going to all these things. And so I just felt so like enlightened, and just like I was like, wow, I think this is what I want to do. Like, even though politics can be messy at times, as you know, I was like, you know, I think this is the route that I need to head on. And I remember being interviewed directly after by this woman in NPR. I think it was actually BBC World News, and they had interviewed me, and I was on like their snippet for like their second, like 2 second, or it was like a 2 minute like clip of like the rally that was in Arizona for Michelle Obama. And I just remember like seeing myself on the screen. I'm like, wow, like what, like this is insane. Like, and so I was like, you know, I think this is like the route that I need to head on. Like, even like just seeing myself like be in that space and in that area, like I can't even like believe it, you know? And so I guess it grew from that. And then I graduated high school. And then after that, I essentially went to travel. I stayed up the whole year by myself, working so hard as a hostess at Mastro's. And I saved the whole year to travel. And then, because at the beginning, I didn't know if I wanted to do international relations or just like, you know, just in, you know, nationally, just within the United States. And so I was kind of debating about that when I was still in high school. So I had traveled, taken a little break, because I think that when you're doing this type of work, as you already may know, like you need breaks. You really do. You need to like ground yourself for 2 seconds, or just like honestly live your life for a little bit, even though there are outside factors going on. And yes, you can acknowledge your privilege when you're doing that. But I had to just recharge my batteries, and then travel for the first time in my life. It was an amazing opportunity. And I think that I had gone in even more passionate about that, because I remember there was like this protest in Italy, and I just remember that scene. Like I you know, it wasn't, I think it wasn't for the right, it was something that was for the left, because I remember someone had translated like, oh, we're protesting about like women's issues, like women's rights and things like that. So I remember me and my friends not even knowing a lick of Italian, we're just like we're just like repeating whatever they're saying, like walking down, and you're like, okay, like let's do it. And so that experience also changed everything that I had seen too in like the world. And so I was like, wow, this is like issues that affect worldwide, you know? And so moved to California, kind of was like settling in with my aunt and like living there. I was like privileged enough to know family in Irvine, California. So then I had started Orange Coast College, which is a really, really good community college. Not gonna lie, they get a lot of funding from measures to like open up a lot of programs and things like that. So I started off with the transfer program, and did like other little programs like the honors program, and like really wanted to get involved because I didn't know anybody. So I was just like, you know, I don't know anyone. I'm a loner. I just have my cousins here, and my cousins are busy going to school. So I started to get involved. And I later then, in terms of like how I got involved with campaign work, it was really funny because I don't know if you know someone by the name of Dana Rohrbacher. Have you heard of him before?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so he's a Republican. He is from Orange County. He represented the 48th congressional district, and so he essentially was this insane guy. If you ever look up YouTube videos, he started like trending like at the very end of his like term in Congress. He was just an insane guy. He would be like, climate change is a hoax. These are like started by like, the rhetoric that they like to use. And then he would just say the most insane things. I can't even remember to this day like what came out of his mouth. But if you YouTube him and like watch videos, like you'd be shocked. Like I don't even. It's something that I don't like that Trump would say, and it was just like basically like crazy. So I saw that there was this candidate who was running against him on Twitter. And I don't even know how he popped up on like my newsfeed. I believe he might have followed me. But his name was Harley Ruda, which he is now currently the 48th congressional candidate in Congress. And so he's running again for re-election. But at the time, like he had like very little followers, and I was like, what's this all about? So I had searched it up, and I realized he was running for Dana Rohrbacher's seat. And then my mom was like, you have to get involved. Like, you have to message them. You have to let them know. So I actually got involved with my first campaign by DMing them on Twitter. And then I had later become their intern, and they were very, very small. They had like probably like 10 staffers on, 5 of them were actually paid, and then like 3 interns. And then I was like the 4th one. And so like it was pretty small. And at first we didn't know that Harley, like when I had got involved, he was running up against like 5 other Democrats. And he was like almost at the bottom of like in terms of how polling was. And so we were basically like, okay, well, we're just going to keep, we're going to keep recruiting. It was my first campaign, so I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I was like, okay, I guess we'll just see where this goes. And I was like, I just like the opportunity. So within that, they just, because there wasn't a lot of interns, they really pushed me and like put it like in a good way, introduced me to a lot of programs that a lot of campaigns use, like PDI and like how to phone bank properly, how to canvass properly, how to like do all these things. And so I later just started to like get interns from my own community college. It started rolling in. The campaign started to grow and grow and grow and grow. And it was crazy because we were running up against this guy who claimed he was a Reagan Democrat. No one knew what the heck that was. We were like, a Reagan who? And so it was like that. And then the person at the top who was taking the polls, his name was Dr. Hans Kierstad. And it was your regular campaign with like the drama here and there, and then volunteers coming in. And then next thing you know, we were at the primary like election night, and by like 2 votes, David, by 2 votes, Harley took the lead in the Democratic like primary. And so obviously Dana Rohrbacher was like at the primary election night, you could see that he was like on, he was the first one, and then it was Harley, and then the Dr. Hans Kierstad. So then eventually they ended up dropping out of the race. And yeah, next thing you know, like the rest is history. Harley ended up winning that campaign. It was my first campaign that I have actually really, really been involved with, won. And so that definitely was a motivating factor for me in terms of like getting involved with politics. And yeah, it was just insane because I think at that moment especially I had realized like the power in voting. And I was like, and so I had pushed a lot on my campus about like getting out the vote, because by 2 votes, David, by 2 votes, he got the like basically the like the spot, to like run against Dana Rohrbacher. So it was just insane. So I had realized that like, yes, I know for presidential elections, a lot of people say like, oh, I'm in the state of California, what does my vote really matter? Like it's gonna be like a Dem candidate anyways, or people in Texas might say like, the flip side of the coin of that. And it's like, okay, fine. And we're not going to make this podcast about how we feel about the electoral system in the United States, but in terms of like locality elections and like congressional elections, it does make a big difference. I think that obviously, of course, you still, if you're going to vote for the rest of them, you might as well just check the box to see what presidential candidate you like. But no, when people say like their vote does not count, that could be farther from the truth when it comes to like congressional and assembly like seats, propositions. Like you have no idea, like sitting down and seeing like the little counts of like the votes coming in, how much it truly matters, how much you regret like not telling those 5 friends that you might have like forgotten about to like let them know, that you should vote. I think you should vote this way because I'm voting this way, but you should vote. And so it just really puts things into perspective. So that's kind of where I started to get more involved in like civic engagement stuff. So that was like really my main focus with my second year at community college. But in terms of activism, I have always really been like, because my first year I was really settling in, like doing campaign work, getting involved, getting to know the process of how things work. And then obviously that year was the Parkland shooting. I don't know if, you recall my first year of college, that's when that happened. And so that was something that was like a very, very hot topic, I think, in the country worldwide, but especially for me, because I was involved with this organization called Amnesty International. So I remember it was, I think, my first semester of college, and I had been really passionate about what was going on. Like, I'm a strong believer that, I don't want to take away the Second Amendment. I don't think that anybody who's advocating, against, for gun regulation is against the Second Amendment necessarily. There are some that are, but like most of them, I think that ones that are advocating really don't want to take away anyone's power to like own a gun if they wanted to. And so I remember we had a walkout because there was, I don't know if you remember that time, but there was a worldwide walkout for the Parkland shooting. And so our club had hosted it at our community college, and we had invited like every class, like we tried to spread it around campus as much as we could. And I had never really done public speaking or like organized a rally before in my life. I was 18 years old at the time still, so I was just kind of like, I was still in that shy mode because I used to be very, very, very introvert when I was younger, like extremely.
Same.
Yeah, and so politics just kind of got me like, like, oh, okay, like, let's do this thing. And so, yeah, so basically what ended up happening is there was probably more than like at least half of the school was there. I just remember there being so many students, and I don't know if that was like the introvert side of me, like just seeing like more people than like there actually was. But I just remember there being like a lot of students, and I ended up, because she hadn't listed the names, right, of the students that passed away. And I remember like there was just so many people. We had organized 2 tables to sign up, to do letters. And then after she was done talking, because it was a very last minute organizing thing that we had to do. Like, you know how it goes. Sometimes it's just quick. And so I just remember thinking in my head, like, is that it? Is that all we're gonna say? Like, we took the time to have all these students come out and like, I mean, of course, we're moment of silence for the students that passed away, but are we not gonna speak about like the issues and what we're gonna do to like bring justice to them? And so I just remember being scared crapless, and sorry, I don't know if I can like
No, go ahead.
I just remember being like so scared, and I was like, because she's like, do you guys want to say anything? And like everybody else on the team was like, and I remember being like, oh my gosh, I don't want to talk in front of all these kids. But I was just like, you know what, give me the microphone. And so if you go on my Instagram, I have like the speech still up there on like one of my posts, but I just started like ranting. And I don't know if this happens to you, but like I think I get, my body like shuts off, but like I still acknowledge what I'm saying, and I'm still very like passionate, but like, at the same time I'm nervous because I'm still like kind of introvert, I'm still like,
exactly.
Everyone has like the stage fright, you know how it is. So I just remember like just opening my mouth and like just going off. And I just remember like my best friend right now, like one of my very, very close friends, I had not known her at the time, and she told me, she's like, I heard your speech that day. I'm a bio major, and I had no interest in politics. And when you started talking, I started like tearing up, and I just remember thinking like, I need to join this club. And so later on, she ended up joining the club, being a board member, and just really getting involved with like advocacy work. And she didn't tell me this until like up about like 4 months ago. And I started like kind of tearing up when she told me, because it's just like, oh my gosh, like the amount of like, if you're passionate about something, even if you're like introvert, extrovert, like the amount of power you have in just like speaking out loud, like what you're thinking and vocalizing it, whether it's through social media or like out loud at a rally, campaign, event, whatever it may be, even having a one-on-one conversation can have so much influence on people. And I just remember being like, wow, like it's insane. And like essentially that's what lawyers do. And that's why I think you and I are very like passionate about advocating, because at the end of the day, like especially if you and I want to be trial lawyers, like that's what we have to do. We have to have A1 advocating like skills to like advocate for our client or like advocate for whoever it may be. And so yeah, I guess that was kind of like the start of it. It wasn't until like where I started getting into, because I started to learn more about how things work with like the student government and like the clubs, and how like education plays like a big part in like maybe sometimes creating those barriers for like low income POC students to really achieve like their degrees. And so like my first thing against like the academic administration was they were trying to, it wasn't even like about anything serious, but throughout my time, I guess like a really big one was they were trying to like reduce parking, and it was so bad because a lot of students would already be late with the reduction of parking like at my community college. And so I was in student government at the time. We were voting on the topic of reducing parking, and everybody on the board was like, yeah, you know, we'll minimize it. And I'm here sitting like, what are you all talking about? And this is a pattern that you see not just in student government, because most of those student government like students end up becoming a part of politics. And you see this happen in politics, is they'll start to conform to things that they think is right when they're so disconnected to their actual like constituency, whether it be like constituency of student population or constituency like their hometown, like what the people that they're representing. And so I just remember like that day just being like, where am I? Who are you all? And like, what did you just vote yes on? And I voted no, and it started to get into this whole thing. And you remember Parley Pro, because I mean, you guys use it slightly in your board meetings, but we had to do it that way strictly. So I remember having like my Robert's Rules book and like trying to find a motion to like recall the vote. And so like I just remember my advisors being so mad at me. They were so mad. They were like, Alex, what? Because they wanted us to vote yes. They wanted us to vote how the school was gonna vote. And I'm like, I'm not voting that. Like kids are like, students are already so mad that like there's no parking, that they're late to class. Some of them don't even show up to, I remember the issue was so bad, David, that they would not even go to class because they realized if they were like, if they had class at a certain time, or if they were late or whatever it may be, they're like, oh, there's no hope. I'm not going to find parking anywhere on that campus anyways. And you already know with community college students, it's already so hard to kind of get people motivated. So like, you take that factor of like getting the quick, easy, accessible way for them to like access their own classrooms, and they're like, screw it, you know, like I don't like, what, why am I going to spend like 20 hours fighting for parking, being late, and then probably getting called out loud by my professor in class? So yeah, we fought that. We did a like stop the like OCC parking reduction, and that was like my first like fight the administration thing. And we ended up winning. We ended up going to like their board meeting for like the school, and advocating like as to reasons why. We had like coalition letters. We were out in front of the library every day collecting petition signatures. I connected with so many students, like, and like listening to their stories about like, you know, this basically the rhetoric that I was expressing, that was like the stories I would hear consistently with students. And so, you know, we expressed it, and they ended up not touching the parking lot, at least when I wasn't there. Hopefully when they finished the other side of the parking lot they were working on, because that's the reason, is they had shut down a whole entire parking lot. And so that's why they wanted to minimize the other one. And it was just like, what?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was like the first thing we did. I also worked a lot in my school about like trying to find like, because they had no, I don't know if you know what the I believe it's AB 540 is the document in the form. But so that's a bill that passed like a while ago. It basically allows like undocumented, but also people who were like maybe were from out of state and then moved to California, to not get charged out of state tuition fees within the school. And so because I was from Arizona, obviously I was interested in trying to find any way that I could to not pay a lot of in tuition. And so because I had already worked there, paid taxes, you know, done everything that I could, and I was out on my own because my mom had lost her job. And so I had to also kind of like help maintain my family because my mom's undocumented. So it was definitely a struggle when she did lose her job. And so, you know, I basically just started to like mature at like a very fast rate. And then I was just trying to find like resources. And then in doing so, I had found out that like the AB 540 resources and documents in my community college weren't one, accessible. And then two, there was no translation. They had like a couple documents that were translated in Spanish, but not like the rest of the other ones that had more information on it. So being in student government, that was like my objective, like my main mission in terms of what I wanted to do there was to try to get those resources acceptable, like accessible for students. And so I had worked a lot with the administration because I sat down on one of their committees where like you could sit with the president and like the school and like all these faculty members. And I had like called them out a couple times on like on it and presented. And so, you know, I worked a lot with like the financial aid office and trying to find like those documents. And I was telling them, I was like, hey, I'm not thankfully undocumented, I'm not undocumented. I'm privileged enough to like be here, study here, and just like try to get you the appropriate paperwork for you to like try to like work with me, but you're creating these barriers for like the students that you're like, oh, we accept like a document, but you're not creating it accessible for them.
Right.
And so I had worked a lot with them. We ended up drafting like language for a poster. They ended up launching this whole program after I had left and after I had talked to the staff. So I definitely had my fair share of like having successful times where I can work with the administration and actually like get stuff done by talking and working with them. But then also not, because sometimes they'll do anything they need to do. And so like for the parking lot, like they didn't want to work with us, so okay, we have to like stand up against you, sorry, so you can hear what we have to say. So yeah, I mean, I guess in a short snippet, that was my first 2 years of college, along with little side projects here and there, just being involved with the clubs. But yeah, so when I came to Davis, I guess like the story that like kind of really shifted everything for me, because I feel like after what had happened my first quarter here, I guess reinforced that why I wanted to be a lawyer or want to be a lawyer, and why I want to do the work that I want to do. For the first time ever, I was challenged to like advocate for myself. And obviously like I had never done that before. I've advocated for students, like, I've had the experience of like advocating at like lobbying at the Capitol, which has been amazing, for like undocumented students, a homeless like student population, and like going to like conventions, whatever, like on the behalf of like my school, which has been such a privilege over the years. And so like I've had experience in that realm and in that field, and a lot of advisors that honestly I don't know where I'd be at today without them. And so I came here and they placed me as an out-of-state student after like I told you, my dad was out of the picture a long time ago. My mom had lost her job, so I was left completely financially independent for those 2 years. And then just trying to work my butt off, trying to like maintain myself, just try to like make my resume good, make myself like work into things like that I'm passionate about. And so essentially when I got here, they like accepted me on my admission records as in state. So I was like, okay, cool, everything's fine. And then I don't know if you remember the documents that you had to do before you transfer over here.
Right.
I had to do the residency one, and it asked me if my parent had lived here for a year, and I said no, and so they asked me, am I independent or dependent? Automatically, because you know how FAFSA is extremely strict, you have to either be emancipated, something about like being a veteran, like things that like wouldn't be applicable to me. So I thought they were talking about FAFSA, so I was like, oh yeah, I'm dependent, that's what I do on FAFSA.
Right.
And so then the paperwork had come back to me, and they're like, sorry, you're out of state, like, and I was like, wait, what? And then next thing you know, my blue and gold was like taken from me, and then my tuition and fees were raised to out of state. So basically they had taken all the financial aid and then just raised the price that I was going to pay. So I was like, great, how am I going to do this? And so then I had appealed to the deputy. They tried working with me as much as they could, you know, quote unquote. And then she basically was like, you know, you don't have enough. And I believe I believe she said paper trail, because I remember using paper trail so much after that. And so I was, she was like, yeah, just unfortunately, like, the policy is very strict. You don't have enough paper trail to back it up. And I was like, okay. And she's like, but you cannot appeal to the UC office of the president. And I was like, well, yeah, I'm gonna do that. And so I appealed, and essentially what had ended up happening is I waited for almost over 3-4 months, David, to find out about the appeal. And I'm here thinking in my head, which no student should ever do. I trusted the administration for some odd reason, because I was like, you know, they'll see the bigger picture once I tell them my story, because it kind of like has a place where you can like explain and like, you know, I gave them so much documentation, bank statements, scholarship letters. Oh my gosh, I can't even, if I were to pull up the email, I don't even know. I sent them like my whole entire 2 years in like an email. And I was like, you know, I'm gonna be fine. It's gonna work out. Obviously it's the office of the president. Shannon Napolitano, she's a Democrat. She's like, I'm here like thinking like so naively, like, oh, it's gonna be fine. Like, it's a UC system. Like, you know, what could happen? And I remember moving to Davis, buying everything that I needed to, maxing out a credit card just to afford to like stay here, because I'm like, oh, okay, once it gets back, like I'll be fine, because financially it will come through and it's all gonna be fine. And so, yeah, I maxed out a credit card just to afford the first deferred, you know, payment plan for UC Davis. And then next thing I know, I'm studying, I'm doing my thing, and then midterms hits, and I hear back from the office of the president, and they're like, I'm so sorry, your appeal was denied and you're out of state. And I was like, oh my God.
Wow.
I was like, oh gosh. Okay. And so I just remember at that moment, like my body going like numb, and I'm like, oh no. And the first thing I started to do was just like, you know, call my family, call my friends, contact anybody that I could. At the time, the only club I was a part of, because I wasn't aware of La Raza as well, I was only a part of the Davis College Democrat. Actually, no, I believe I did started to get involved with you guys, with y'all. But no, yeah, I believe I did start to get involved in La Raza at that time, because I remember asking the board, like, hey, I'm going through this situation. But yeah, so I had the Davis College Democrats, and I just remember like getting close to them very early on. And so I had contacted everybody I like knew, and they're like, you have to post about this. Like, you have to start like talking about it on like social media, like everywhere, because it's just like insane. Because like people who know my life story, like especially those who like lived down with me in Orange County and saw me like work almost 35 hours a week while also being a part of a campaign, while also being part of school, while also doing this, you know, and they were shocked. They're like, what? You're not a California. What? The state thinks you're a resident. We know you're like, you lived here, you paid into taxes. What do you mean? They're telling you you're out of state. And so I was just shocked. I was shocked, David. And so what I ended up happening was I started a GoFundMe, because, and at the time, that was before I even thought about change.org. And I don't even know if change.org, no, it was big. It's been big for a while, but I don't know why it didn't, like, I really didn't really think about that from the get-go. What I was thinking of was like, okay, I'm going to fight this appeal, but the payment plan was due in like 2 weeks. And so I'm like, what am I going to do? Like, if I do that, they just drop me in like my midterms and my classes, my grades, like, what am I going to do? So the only thing I could think of on the spot, because my family, you know, was like, we're low income. Like, I was like, okay, so I need to like try to fund and also share my story. So on the GoFundMe page, I'd seen though that a lot of people do GoFundMe for tuition reasons. So it was a tuition reason. You know, I posted my community college like graduation picture, and I had this long caption, probably with some typos in it, because, you know, it was typing it with tears, typing it with stress, typing it with anxiety. And just posted my entire life story, and then posting like what had happened in detail, and just tried to see if I could fundraise money, you know, for myself. And so I had posted it on Facebook. Everybody from the Davis College Democrats had shared what had happened. And I just remember the post like starting to be reposted like a lot on Facebook, and like a lot, my family, my friends, like people from Orange County, like my friends from Arizona, like reposting. And next thing I know, like I have people from the UC Student Association contact me, which is, they're apparently like basically the primary group that like advocates for students, which they do, you know, they really do. But it just, I've already talked with Diana, it's kind of sucks that they're the only group out there that is organizing for us and advocates for us. But they had reached out to me, and he was actually really nice. He's Parshawn, he's the director of the UCSA. He's already a graduate student, but I talked a lot with him one-on-one, trying to figure out like what's the game plan, what's the next move. I talked a lot with like the former president of DCD, Maya De La Rosa, and like Brooke. And we were talking a lot about like what's next to strategize. You know, I had with your org, like you know, I talked about them about the situation. They were like, oh, if you need anything. So next thing I know is like I have all these student groups with me. And I remember, because it was so early on in the quarter when the situation happened, there was like the club rush. And I had gone to every single club that I thought would be relevant in terms of like building a coalition. And I just remember like, I don't believe I was late to class, but I remember skipping lunch that day, and just being like, you know, like, I need your help. Like, I need your help. And so like, I was going to like this group called Hope as well. And the former president is actually now a really, really, really good friend of mine. Her name is Julia. But I had met her for the first time, telling her about my story and telling her, because I did couch surf a lot throughout my time in like community college. And so I had ridden the bus, like I had gone to the pantry. I definitely struggled economically. My first 2 years out there was really hard for me. And at the moment, I didn't realize that couch surfing was a form of homelessness. So there was also that factor in terms of like my residency status within the school, because if they were to have like not accepted me as in-state and I would have to move, like I would have ended up either crashing on one of my friends from Davis's couches again, or like God knows where, like very unstable housing. And so I just remember approaching them and just being like, yeah, because what the issue had been was that because I was couch surfing, I didn't have the paper trail of the rent that I was like, because I wasn't on a lease. And so that's why there was this whole drama, is that, or not drama, but it's just like this block in the road, is that I didn't have the sufficient amount of paperwork to prove it. And, you know, even with my mom, like, I mean, I'd send them her termination letter, send them my dad's judge court order of his deportation, so much paperwork, and it was still not enough. They strictly wanted like that specific housing paperwork. And I just remember thinking, because it was my friends, because at that time, you know, when you're going through something like that, you don't really like, you're not thinking about like everything, you're just like, I don't know, your mind's just very like all over the place. And so I remember my friends being like, well, what do they expect like people who have housing insecurity, which is a lot of college students, to do if they don't have the paper trail? Like, what if they're crashing on their car and they're like, oh, you're out of, like, you know, like, it's just like, oh. And this happens a lot with financial aid. That's why when we took on the issue recently, I'm like, so I ended up basically going to all these clubs, basically forming like an informal coalition just to help me out. Going to the AB 540 Undocumented Center, going like everywhere, David. And I think what a lot of people need to understand is when you're going through situations, no matter what it is, you should contact your representatives who are there for you. And I think that goes for like anything. Like, there's different ones that are appropriate for like what you're trying to do. Like, for federal ones, you want to obviously, like, if you're having an issue with a federal program, contact them. For state ones, if you're dealing with EDD or like California DMV, like something like that, like you contact your local one. But they'll even refer to you, though, if you're not in the appropriate office, they'll give you the right number. At least a good office will give you a right number to contact. And so I contacted Cecilia, which is the assembly member for like the Davis area, Bill Dodd, and then Garamendi, which is the congressional. And so I contacted all their offices. I even contacted the attorney general, David. I was like, because I was just like, I need to, like, this is not okay. Like, everybody was like, what are they doing? And so they were literally about to kick out, like, I was literally about to be left probably going to a community college or like going into the workforce. And that's what's the problem, is they're here saying like, oh, get your degree, you can do it, you know, we believe in you, like just put the effort. And it's like, okay, we put the effort, we try to get the degree, and then the academic institutions themselves that tell us that put the roadblocks in the way for us to achieve that. And it's just like, okay, so I'm trying, but I'm pushing and pushing and pushing, but you're not letting me get through. So that's kind of what had happened. And so this turned into a way bigger issue. It turned into an issue like that, that their policies that they have in place were so black and white that they no longer helped the students that they were strictly admitting. Because as you remember, the UC application, they're very big on wanting to know what your adversity is, what your story is. Mm-hmm. And obviously, you know, and this is okay, like it's perfect. Like they want POC low income students to really tell us how they got up, like they even through the circumstances that they were born into, that they had challenged that and tried to move on to like achieving their degree, achieving their career, achieving their like passion in their future. And really pushing to get like a good GPA, you know, or a good opportunity or just something like that. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, you're doing that. And then the policies, and not just the residency policy, the policies in general don't reflect the applicants that you're admitting. Mm-hmm. And it's been especially more recently, because I believe if you were to collect data, I believe the UC institution was predominantly more like Caucasian white, but over the years they have expanded their field of applicants in terms of like economic status, but also like race, ethnicity, like background. And so obviously, you know, they're accepting a lot of AB 540 and DOCU students, or students that have undocumented parents themselves. And we don't have the paper trail to back the things that they want from us sometimes. Like, how can we, you know, we don't have sometimes like our parents don't have the paper trail to back up to get a job. So how do you expect us to get paperwork from them that's something that they don't have? And so things like that, obviously advocating in the past for homeless students in terms of community college, thankfully I had known these statistics and these data and had done research with my committee my second year of college before I had transferred over here, because learning the bill that I believe Scott Wiener put on the assembly floor that year, or the Senate floor, whatever it may have been, we had advocated for the bill, and we had learned that I believe it might be 65% of California community college students suffer some sort of food insecurity / housing insecurity issue in the state of California. Like it was something around there, somewhere, because I don't want to be incorrect in my data, but like it was somewhere between like 50 to 60, which is like more, if not half, of the California community college students, which the goal of most community college students is to up their transfer rate. Mm-hmm. So they end up transferring to institutions like Cal State or the University of California. Mm-hmm. So if we're looking at that data itself, and they're saying that most homeless, housing, food insecurity struggle students from community college is half or more than half, and they come here and they have lived there either in their car, have couch surfed from place to place. Maybe they had moved like me from a different state and wanted to go to community college, not to transfer, but just to live in California, to start their life here. or maybe they wanted to file for a financial aid dependency form, or something of that sort of nature, like file for homelessness. Because for homelessness, they need 2 letters. They need 1 from you to go to like the shelter, and then 2 from a homeless counselor. Okay, if you're suffering from housing insecurity, I was, by the way, which, you know, now that I have learned, I realized that in some sort of capacity I kind of was. I had never known that there was a homelessness counselor, or that I could go to like these sort of place. Like I had never known those things. So I can't be the only student who didn't know that that was a thing. So how are those people who live in their cars, who hop couch to couch from their friends' house, supposed to provide the financial aid office at the UC institution paperwork to follow what they had lived? So the whole experience opened this big can of worms that I'm currently still trying to fix and fight over, that the UC institution just has these black and white policies that prohibit people from getting their education. And that's so what ended up happening is I ended up going into a room with the vice chancellor and all these administrators, like director of financial aid, director of the registrar at UC Davis, Barbara herself, who was a deputy for the residency office, all these different people. I think the chair of the enrollment center was literally there. And they had scheduled that meeting with me. And in the past, they were making it really hard for me, because I remember like them calling me randomly. And I remember my friends from the Davis College Democrats, they were like, hey, come to Tahoe. You don't have to, you know, we'll take you. You just like, you need to get away for a little bit. You've never been to Tahoe. You need to just put this on pause for 3 days and just like, you know, act like a college student, like just live for a little bit. And so I remember being like, okay. And the school called me, I believe, like on a Friday or Saturday, like at around 2 to 3. And I remember being, without any acknowledgement that this was going to happen, being on a call with like 5 administrators on the phone, driving to Tahoe, not being prepared at all for anything. And I basically was bombarded by their call, and they were like questioning me, like all these administrators on the phone. And I'm like, what the heck? And it basically, David, it felt like they thought I was like lying to try to get money from them.
Crazy.
They thought that was my only objective, was to try to get money from the UC institution. Because I don't know if you know this, but in the past, that's why the residency policy has also changed a lot, is because they did have an issue like that in the past. But the thing is, like, they know my life experience. I've sent the documentation. So it's just like, if you know the student's circumstances, then why are you questioning? You're kind of almost degrading that person, like as a whole, like their life experiences and like what they've been through. So it's just like, I was on the phone, very bombarded, and like they sounded like they were against me, and like that I was just like that I was probably not gonna see the end of like the light of that tunnel. That I had already had, like after that call, it was like, wow, I'm probably not gonna be here anymore. Like they just sounded like I don't know. They sounded like I don't even know what. And so basically what ended up happening was they had scheduled the appointment for all the administrators, like I was mentioning previously. They thought I was going to walk in alone to a room of like 9+ administrators and one freshly 20-year-old student. Yeah, so they didn't expect for me to show up with, I asked my friend Maya, who had been the president of DCD, and then the current president of DCD, Brooke, who I had gotten really close with over like the past few months. And they both have been doing advocacy work. The other one has done advocacy work, and she's also pre-law. And so like, basically like-minded people like me, and I was just like, and my friends, and I was like, hey, can you please come with me, because I'm scared. Like I'm pretty sure this meeting is like the make it or break it, and kind of like figuring out what's next for me, like whether I'm gonna have to do something more, whether I'm just gonna have to like just see what they offer and like probably leave, and I don't know. And so they didn't expect me to show up with 2 people. They didn't expect me to ask if I could record the meeting. To this day, I have the recording of the meeting. I got their permission from everybody to record that meeting. And what ended up happening was the meeting was basically to find out like if I was going, they had offered me if I wanted to PELP, which I don't know if you know what that means, but it's to basically leave for a quarter and come back. And I was like, no, I don't want to PELP. The other offer was to take a whole like year and like not reapply, but like come back to the school like in the next academic year. And I was like, well, okay, no, I don't want to do that. Like, and then the other option was just to try to work things through. And so how the meeting had started was me asking for permission to record. And what I basically did was present my own case and why I think the policy is not reflective on me, and why students like me who live in a gray area of like policies that require certain paper trail, why we don't fit into that role, and why they should give us like, and why students should get an exemption if they have like lived through those experiences and can't provide the amount of documentation that they want. And so I laid out my whole entire case. I had like a folder, right, of like my community college, and I had like bank statements in there. And then as I was talking, I was literally giving the vice chancellor the documentation like one by one. I was like, you know, I've been in clubs, and then I put down like a paper of evidence, and then I was like, here are my bank statements. You can see that I have spent my own money for the past 2 years. I have even circled and highlighted any deposits from my work, from scholarships within the school, from whatever it may be. And so then I handed it to him. I handed him like the scholarship certifications themselves from my community college that I've received. And then W-2s, 1040s, everything, David. And even letter of recommendations, I started putting on there, like from my professors, like here's to show you that I'm a good student, that like I honestly try to work my best, that I try to like be as good as I can every day and just try to push myself. And then at the very end, I was like, and here is me telling you that I have been in contact with an education lawyer, and that what you all are doing today is not correct, and I know it. And so they were all left like, my friends who were with me, they were like, I swear when you were done talking, they were all just, they took like, and they did, because I was, I'm not gonna lie, I was emotional. I was very, sometimes tearied up when I would tell them the beginning of the story about like my family, my parents, and because it's hard, you know, but they were like, when you were done talking, like the room just went silent for like 6 minutes, and everybody was just like, and so I just remember like the deputy, her name is Barbara, and she was fighting. She, after I had already shared my whole entire story and presented like my case, she was basically like, because my mom had moved to California, and then she was working on her immigration paperwork and her status within the country and the state, and the deputy was like, can you just apply next year and like just show us evidence about your mom's like California ID, because you need, and I'm like, because I was like, oh, does she need the California ID? And she's like, yeah, she needs it. And I was like, but she's she's undocumented. I know she can get it within the state, but her immigration lawyer says that he doesn't recommend for her to get that until like her paperwork has been finalized, because I don't know if you know this, but a lot of immigrants who are applying for citizenship, if one of their children or even themselves apply to like programs like CalFresh, Medi-Cal, Medicare, even, God, the immigration system is so screwed up that even if you were to try to get identification, which is really only valid in a couple states that they do this with for immigrants, which one is California. I wouldn't be surprised if New York has it. Arizona definitely does not have this law in place. But my mom was scared of 2 things. One, going against what her immigration lawyer advised her not to do. And then 2, and again, this is a topic for maybe like a different discussion for a different day, but a lot of immigrants have been deported because they have been identified in California by that ID card. And a lot of people actually, since that law was implemented and a lot of immigrants started to get their IDs within California, you saw an uptick on deportations. And so I don't know where that data kind of reflects in terms of that. So I also think like, yes, in the state of California, like it is amnesty state, you know, or not amnesty, but sanctuary state. And we do have laws in place to help immigrants, but you need to be very, very careful because you're in their system. You know, it's still somewhere where you can be identified, even though the state of California has put laws in place so that the federal government doesn't interfere, specifically ICE interfere with getting those documentation and paperwork. It could, depending on the county, because again, some of the counties, most of them don't work with ICE in the state of California, but there probably would, I wouldn't be surprised. I think there are some in the San Diego area and Orange County that maybe do at times. And so, you know, if they were to get that identification card, the police station has that on their record if they've ever been stopped or anything like that. And they could potentially work with ICE and then do that, even if it's on the low, which, you know, I don't know if that's a thing or not here, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised because where would that data come from, the upticking of deportations? So anyways, then basically the deputy was like, well, I don't know what to tell you. Your mom needs to get it. And so then the vice chancellor interrupts her because this is all recorded. I have this on my phone. Wow. He goes, no. We're not saying that. We're going to look more into that issue. And so he stopped her from continuing on to that conversation. But you could tell, because she's, you know, she's a white Caucasian woman. And you could tell that, I don't know, you know, I don't want to claim anything on this podcast, but like, yeah, she was just very, very passive aggressive with me, and definitely not sympathetic, empathetic at all towards the situation. And so my friends even saw that, and they're like, dude, when she said that, I was like, what the hell? Like, and I was like, I knew it because she had always been very passive with me, David. Very passive. When she was the first person I shared my story with. You know, I was like, hey, my dad's this, my mom's this. That's why I'm in a very gray area. Like, can you work with me? And she's like, no, appeal. And so I was like, wow. So she pushed, even at that meeting, she was still so persistent on not like being understanding whatsoever. After I've been so vulnerable, fought so hard, showed up there and 6 administrators, 2 friends, a recorded live. And so, yeah. So basically the meeting ends, and the financial aid director, Trina Wilson, or co-director, Trina Wilson, and the admissions director, vice chancellor had left, I believe, and I believe it was the director of the registrar, so Barbara's boss, had all been there in the room only after everyone had left. And Trina, wow, she, like, you know, even though, like, you know, I know the financial aid has their own issues, but she really did, because I can't sit here and lie to you that no administrator worked with me, because that wouldn't be true. Trina did work with me, and she kind of like was like, well, hey, I think that this is what we should do. You from evidence, you have showed us that you have suffered housing insecurity. So I think that we need to like work with the financial aid to classify you as such. So that way, for the residency issue, it surpasses that, because you are technically like someone who suffers from housing, and that, you know, it doesn't get more evident than that you're independent. And so I worked with her through that. But after that, the admissions record person, and then the registrar director went up to my friends, but also me, and they're like, wow, you said you were pre-law, right? And I was like, yeah, I think I want to be pre-law. And they're like, well, you're going to be an amazing lawyer, so you should honestly like stick to that. And I remember that day, like, and that's why I'm telling you, like, from what I said in the beginning, like, this experience really changed everything for me. Because first of all, how I viewed people who want to take on the role as a lawyer, and like approaching those like institutions, those, or just like a trial, and like trying to like go with, you know, trying to claim your case. And so that put a lot of things into perspective, and I was like, this is what I need to do. This is what I want to do. Like, I love policy and I want to do policy too, but I think that I'm really good at advocating, and I have now proven that I can advocate for myself and others as well. And so Yeah, they're kind of like the rest is history. I ended up basically talking to Trina, working it out with her. They ended up, basically applying my financial aid back, classifying me as in state. Um, and everything was relatively, fine. I went to the UC Regents meeting that same semester in San Francisco, and I ended up advocating for the residency policy and letting them know that what I had just told you right now on the podcast, like your applicant pool straight to the, like, because it's the president and then all the other regents, and it was like this table. And you can find my video on my Facebook, or I don't know if I have it on my Instagram, but my Facebook. And I just said it straight to her, I'm like, so she can even get emotional, like because she's from Phoenix herself, she's from Arizona. So I told her, I was like, I'm from Phoenix, I'm a transfer student, because the president, chancellor, I forget his official title, of the entire California community college system sits on that meeting. He's part of the regions. So I was also letting him know how the process is for his own students, how this UC institution is putting barriers for his own students that he wants to be transferred to this institution. And so, I mentioned everything because I realized my crowd, that's a big thing. You got to observe the crowd, see who you're talking to. And so, so from Phoenix, transfer student, and your admission applicants do not, like, your policies do not reflect the admission applicant pool that you're accepting. And it's very black and white. I have been found in the gray area. Others have been in the gray area. And you keep accepting these applicants without actually changing the policies you have in place. And I said, I am someone who suffered from your very black and white residency policy. And I'm here to ask you today to please review that policy for it to conform to the people that you're admitting into your institutions currently. And they know what that meant. They know what they meant, because they're fighting, they fought for DACA students, yet their own policies have barriers when they ask for paperwork, some which most undocumented students or children of undocumented parents don't have. So it's just like, it's ironic. And, when not to, like, when we hear conservatives say sometimes, like, that are hypocrites and things like that, that's what they're talking about, and you can't blame them. And that's why most Democrats who've been in the middle have, like, turned left. And that's why there's a lot of radical people, because we have realized that even people who claim they're liberal or Democrat don't actually put their words into actions. And then they look hypocritical and make us, who are trying to actually fight the institution, fight the change, make us look bad. And they think, oh, are you a hypocrite too? And it's like, no, like, they are, but we're not. So that's what they're kind of talking about, is because, like, the UC institution is known to be, especially now, a more, like, liberal institution. However, their policies aren't reflected of that at all. So yeah. And then, right now we're fighting the financial aid petition. And then we're trying to build a coalition, and I'm kind of going about it in the same steps that we took for how I was doing my residency thing. And thankfully I had experience in, like, the whole fighting the UC institution, because it's a different ballpark, David, like, fighting community college versus fighting the UC institution itself. I had talked to my bosses about this, because I currently work for the North Valley Labor Federation. And I was telling them that in order, because they have a program down in UC Merced to help, like, labor students, labor unions, like, because Merced is a very underrepresented place in general, because ASME, which is a labor, you probably heard me, they were doing the strike in early November. I don't know if you've heard of them. Yeah, ASME. Yeah. So they don't cover UC Merced as much as the other UC students. So the place I work for, the North Valley Labor Federation, has actually a program starting to run where they can help advocate for them and, like, help them. And I was telling them, I was like, thank God, because, and I was like, and also because they were talking about, like, this chancellor, and I was like, yeah, the chancellors and the administration within the university, but when you want to fight something, especially UC, it covers UC, because how you should, like, how people need to view it, especially how I hope people view it, is the UC is like the mothership, and like all these other like schools, like Chancellor May, UCI, like all these people just conform to whatever they say. Whatever they say is the final word. Whatever they say goes. They're like, they control the whole thing. And so, you know, and that's why I've always found it funny, is like, it doesn't matter what UC you go to. At the end of the day, we're all the same. Our professors switch around, and like, we're all everywhere anyways. We all, our schools all conform, they all listen to one group and one group only, which is the office of the president and the regents. And so what sucks about going to UC, which I don't know how it plays out in Cal State, if I'm gonna be completely honest, is if you want to fight something, fine. You get to the chancellor, you work through it through the administration. But in order for you to actually change something like radically and like right away and actually put your foot on the ground and actually make that change permanent, you have to go through the school and then through an organization that represents you, which luckily UCSA contacted me, and then go to the regents meeting, try to talk to them, try to see if they will talk to you, and then still be far away from them in a microphone. And that's kind of like the best you can get. And that's how you can fight the change. And then obviously knowing someone, which is awful, because like, I was telling this with Diana, because we're currently fighting like the financial aid adjustment, how it was reducted for students on campus, especially during a pandemic. And I was telling her, like, and also when we had our coalition talk last Monday or 2 Mondays ago, I was telling them all, it's awful, because if you're like you and I, if you're not like you and I, or like anybody from our organization who like is passionate about law, politics, or policy, like let's say you're a STEM person who like, I don't like to listen which, you know, we try every day to get those people involved and to listen. But if you're truly like an 18-year-old freshman coming into the UC system, and maybe you haven't been privileged enough to like have those opportunities to learn when someone's taking advantage of you, like in terms of like administration, or like financially or anything like that, then, and you also don't have, because Diana was telling me, she's like, you know, Alex, you know how to sometimes phrase things so like perfectly when we're talking to those people. Or sometimes like I get like Cynthia and Diana were like, yeah, I was like nervous when we were talking to like the journalist or like the vice chancellor when we were on the phone call with him, and they're like, and you just know how to handle it. It's like, yeah, because I've had the experience, like as I have shared with you, I've had experience over the time. I mean, the first time I did it, I was scared crazy at my community college, but I've had the experience to talk to all these people. But I've also been privileged enough to have those experiences to talk to those people. And some students haven't had the, you know, those opportunities because they've had to work 40 hours a week to just even afford to go to college, because they maybe weren't aware of the resources on campus, because maybe they have to take care of their parents, of their children, of their brothers, of their sisters, and they maybe weren't given the opportunity to expand their horizons and to be involved in such like programs, clubs, whatever it may be. And it's those people that get taken advantage the most. It's the low income, the ones that don't have the experience, the background, constituents themselves, where they're voting on like the Capitol floor, the congressional floor, and they're like, we're not aware of the language that they use within the own bill, because reading bills is hard. You actually have to learn how to like properly read what they're saying, because if you had never, ever read an assembly bill, a Senate bill, a code, you know, whatever, and you're looking at this for the first time, you're like, what the? You're like, yeah, what? You start to read the document like 10 times. And the UC institution does that too. The state of California does that. The federal government does that. All these places, like lawyers themselves, you have to go to law school to learn how to read the code and work with judges. And so
like a new language you're reading.
It really is, and that's what we're gonna learn, especially the next 3 years, is how to read code, how to read laws, how to do this, how to advocate for that. And it's just like the administration doesn't expect students to either, one, be able to afford a lawyer, two, knowing how to get maybe a pro bono lawyer, three, knowing how to advocate or have been advocated or having someone to advocate for you. And then 4, just like not having the experience. They don't think that you have any of those things. Therefore, it's so easy for them to take advantage of students, whether it be through residency, whether it be through financial aid, whether it be through housing, whether it be through whatever the situation is. And they know that. And that's why they continue to not change anything, to act like everything's fine, to look well through social media, like, oh, we're at DACA, help us support in the Supreme Court. Like, yet their policies aren't reflective. Yet they're not doing enough to actually change their own institutions, which they have the power to do, but they'd rather go and like fight another fight when they haven't even changed their own foundation of their roots and their own academic like institutions. So yeah, I don't know. In a nutshell, that's that.
Yeah. What would be your advice to them, and that are kind of in the similar situation you were, that don't really know too many people,
Yeah, I think that, and this has been, you'd be surprised because there are people like you and I, or like you especially, who have advocated for others. And I'm not saying that you specifically, but like other people that I know that have advocated, yet when something happens to them, they don't know how to advocate for themselves. And that's something that I had to experience. Like, I was like, wow, I have done this for so long, but then now that it's actually pointing to me, I'm like, what do I do? So, if you weren't to have like connections, which it's totally fine. Like I had mentioned earlier, you build that coalition, depending on like, it really, it's really going to take some time, which I know not a lot of people may have, but that's why, especially UC Davis, they're building this new position called UC like student advocate. I don't know like how that position is really going to go. I hope it ends up being successful for them. It was purposely aimed to help students enter those like meetings with the vice chancellor in those places, and sit next to the student to help be able to advocate for them. But I think that for students who are either facing like any administration issues, any person who's facing like legality issues, whether it be like you just moved into a new place and you feel like your property manager is taking advantage of you, I think that especially that's why being in the field of law and being around people who are also passionate in the field of law and connecting with a lot of pre-law students and a lot of lawyers is that, for such a long time, I was like, oh, policymakers are the ones that kind of put everything in place, and then the lawyers take that and then they fight that in court and things like that. They try to like, and at first I was like, oh, it's policymakers. Like, not that there's a food chain or like, when it comes to like that kind of stuff. And I thought it was like, oh, obviously like, the federal government, within the state, the policymakers, and then lawyers or judges and then lawyers. And, so I never really considered like being a lawyer, like someone who like impacts society or like the world. Like, I mean, I always thought that they impacted the world and society like a lot, because, they're up there on like my mental food chain that I thought is how kind of like how society works if you want to like actually make change within your like community. But after this experience, after so long that I have like realized it, I realized that lawyers have so much power. They have so much power to help you advocate. They're the OG advocates. Like they advocate for you, but like they can walk in anywhere, because the education lawyer who I had met with, who unfortunately was not pro bono, but her consultation was nevertheless something that was affordable. They can walk into those meetings. And so I think what a lot of students need to know is, who are introvert, is first of all, like, stay tuned into like what's going on in society as much as you can. Even though I know that it could be overwhelming to get like wake up to those news notifications, and like sometimes like there's a lot going on in our world right now, the pandemic and like the social unrest and like just everything along those lines. It can be overwhelming, and that's okay. That your mental health comes first, and I know if you need to take a break at times, that's understandable. But you need to, first of all, voting is like your number one superpower that you can do to like try to affect some change. Because like I told you, those 2 votes could have had Dr. Hans Kierstad win a congressional seat in Orange County. 2 people could have turned out and changed the entire election. 2. And so when people say that they don't have the power, they do. So 1, vote for things that matter, vote for things that you care about, vote for people who will defend you. 2, know who your assembly member and your senator is, know who represents you, because, and I think I forgot this detail in the story because I told you that I had reached out to them, but I didn't elaborate more in terms of what they did. So the assembly member and the senator's office both reached out to the government relations officer at UC Davis, and they pushed and pushed, and they're like, hey, we have this constituent, she called us, she says she's having an issue with you all, what are we going to do about it? How are you going to help her? What's going on? And so the school not only had pressure from my social media posts, from me, myself, from students that were helping with like share my story with me, but also the school had pressure from the assembly member and the senator saying like, hey, we have a constituent. And that's what people need to know, is that I know politics can seem like, it's hopeless and sometimes they're not that actually there for you, but I promise you, after calling them myself with my own like experience and my own issue that I was going through, and then also interning for the actual like assembly member in Orange County, Cotty Petrie Norris, I realized that like a lot of constituents and a lot of people don't know that if you call them and you have an issue that it's within their scope, because like I said, it could be a Senate issue that you might have to call their office. It might be a federal issue. They have a requirement to be there and help you until your case is closed. We literally have a button where we have to put updates and we have to close your case once it was resolved, and it has to be resolved. There's no other issue. You either were deferred them because it's a federal issue, or maybe it was something more for the Senate and the assembly member, it's the same thing. They can approach either office, but it was either a federal issue and you directed them to the congressional office, or it was you. But either way, you have no other option but to close that case until something was resolved. Like until you actually literally are up to the roadblock where not even the governor or the president, like it has to approach their office. You have to help them up until that point where you can no longer do it, and it has to be the governor or the freaking president of the United States himself, or themselves. And so that's what people need to know, is that you have an issue and it's in your district area. It's even UC Davis students need to know this. Oh my gosh, the school hates it when you contact the assembly member, hates it when you contact the Senate's office. So do it.
Yeah,
so do it.
Advice.
You have an issue, do it. Call them. Call Garamendi's office. Call whoever. Call them and have those elected officials pressure the school. And so that's number 2, is know who represents you and have them do what they're paid to do, which is to help you as a constituent. And then 3, in terms of like when you're talking to them, I told Diana and Cynthia this. I was like, I know that it may sound like I'm, but talk to them however you need to talk to them, and listen to what they say. Listen very carefully, and like how I did, because I was very nervous that day when I entered the meeting. I had 2 friends with me, who were able. One of them caught one of the administrators like almost trying to like pass on a subject that shouldn't have been passed at all, like, oh, hey, no, wait a minute, we need to talk about this. My friend is going through this. And she stopped. She was like, hey, no, like, what are you gonna, and she stopped her. And I was like, oh my God. And if I wouldn't have had her in that room, I would have just been crying, like trying to present the paperwork and like, still trying to. And so having like a group, a person that you can rely on. And although I really hope that the UC Davis ASUCD's advocate position is going to be successful, I was telling her, like, I didn't even know this existed until I actually did deep research into this. So that's also another thing, is that, you don't always know who. So even if it's not someone who's into policy or politics, get someone there. get someone who's a friend who cares about you in that room to listen and to observe what they're saying to you if you can't afford for a lawyer to sit there. And that's actually going to be my I think, or what would point five is get a lawyer, whether it be pro bono or if you know, you have the money for that one consultation, maybe for them to walk into you to a certain meeting, to a certain thing that you're doing where you just need a lawyer present there to see if what they're doing is even legal. Get them. ASUCD says they do provide a lawyer, however, because they're pro bono, because there's thousands of students on campus, it could be really, really hard to even get pro bono lawyers from our campus to come with you. So, you know, try finding pro bono. There's a lot. I know that there's like the pro bono legal council, I think, and they have that like nationwide. So you can check that out, and they'll, you know, I told Diana this because she was facing some issues too with like, because you see this a lot happening with like housing situations. And so I was saying, you know, like, get a lawyer, get a lawyer, because I'm pretty sure like none of this, especially when you think that none of it sounds right, that's your moment where you need to start looking into the legality of the issue you're facing, whether it be housing, and you have like housemates taking advantage of like trying to like basically kidnap you into a lease where you have already found like people to replace you and they're just not letting you go, or whether it be you're fighting an institution or, you know, an academic institution, or your work is, which is something that I had to experience too, is taking advantage of you in terms of like labor law codes, and they're violating that. I don't I had to highlight my first year, I think it was either my first or second year of college, because I was an assistant manager at a restaurant, and the place that I was working at was clearly violating so many labor laws. I couldn't even count them, David. I was like, people were going overtime. The boss didn't want like lunch breaks, and like, which is illegal in the state of California. You have to take a lunch break. You have to take a lunch break if you're working. I believe it's more than a 5-hour shift. I think you have to legally give them 30 minutes, or 15 to 30 minutes. And then if it's first of all, I think 12 hours, you have to give them like an hour. And I don't even believe like 12 hours. There's also the like legality of even working people 12 hours. Cause I remember there has to be like a break, like a big break between there. He was not doing that at all. Not at all. And honestly, I don't even, it was just such a mess. And I remember cause by the, you know, if you're getting harassed at your workplace, even if it's just like a kind of like a form of bullying, like they call it harassment at the workplace. And I was kind of experiencing some sort of like that, some sort of like ageism and sexism at my work. And I had to approach my boss and let him know that I was experiencing that, and that, you know, things needed to change. And so I walked into our meeting, and because there was a lot of outside issues, and I had highlighted the amount. I had read through the labor like law codes and the codes of California, and I had highlighted everything that he was violating, and I had printed out the packet, and I handed it to him in the meeting. I was like, you need to read this, because if not, you're going to be in big trouble down the road. Wow. His face just dropped. He was like, and I was like, I don't mean to scare you. I'm not going to sue you. I'm just telling you, like, because it was like the harassment thing too. That was like the main concern for me. But I was like, I'm telling you right now, like, you need to let me give our employees these things, because if the other manager is threatening that I'm going to get fired or in trouble for giving the worker something that I legally have to do, then I can't work here, because I don't want to get in legal trouble. So I'm giving you this labor law code, and I'm telling you, I'm going to start doing all these things. Like, I already have done it. And the issue was that the other manager got mad that I was giving our own employees 30-minute breaks. And I was like, I was like, they have to eat.
Yeah.
So basically, to kind of wrap that up, is like, you know, try your best. You don't have to know the labor law code. You don't have to know a certain law. You don't have to be a part of policy. Just try your best to pay attention to the news as much as you can, because I think that also goes a long way, because that stuff changes all the time. You know who your constituency is. Know that legal representation is out there for you in some sort of way and capacity, especially now that times are changing. Society's trying to get better in terms of like getting that legal representation. And I bet you and I both, as lawyers, we want to do a lot of pro bono work, and not because of taxes, because we want to. And you know, people need to know that there are lawyers out there. It is hard to find, and you do have to do some digging. But if you're facing an issue, try your best to find someone who can advocate for you. My first choice is a lawyer, because they know their stuff, and they can tell you what's going on, even if it's a consultation. If you're worried that you're experiencing something that you know is not legal or cannot be legal, go visit a lawyer, go see what's going on. Even if the consultation, you know, if you can afford it, great. If not, pro bono, always definitely recommend it. And then just see what other steps you can take, you know, form a coalition. I think with change.org, I think that everybody's kind of realizing now that they have the power to do something. Mm-hmm. So for the first time ever, like for me at least, like I'm seeing students from all different backgrounds, and not even students, but like people all over the world just form and organize themselves over like everything that's been going on. Because, and this is the main thing that kind of hits the home run about like this topic, is that like finally people are starting to care because it impacts them, you know. And that's how we all get inspired, and that's how we all get involved, is because these issues impact us. We get involved, we have that flame set within us. And then, you know, with COVID, they've been locked in for too long. They see that what's going on is not okay. And the social unrest, they're seeing, you know, Black people are seeing their own communities, their own their own children, their own mothers, their own brothers, uncles, sisters, whatever, be killed out on the street. And it's hitting home. It's the fear setting in, and the passion, the flame is setting in. You know, people of even of a darker phenotype. That's why like you see a lot of like Latinx people out there as well, is because we can relate. We can relate to the racism that we've been experiencing in this country. We can relate to the barriers that have been placed that don't allow us to proceed with our future, to proceed to like gain something better for us, and to be, you know, and not even just like, because screw that model minority BS, like to be the person that they want to be without having trouble accessing it, without being murdered getting to it, you know. And so yeah, I think that that's why we're seeing a lot of change.org. I think that that's why we're seeing a lot of communities come together and help a lot of people who have been impacted and like harassed out on like the vendedores. We saw like that guy who was attacked. We saw almost like, I don't even know what the change.org or the petition may be at the GoFundMe, but he was at like 4 million, like 4,000, like 400,000. It was like so much, like just a day after the incident had happened. And so we're seeing the community organize in different places like throughout the world more than ever. And especially I feel like in the state of California. And so I think that we're on the right track. I think that that's something I did when I was advocating for myself a year ago. That's something that we're doing for Breonna Taylor, is all these like petitions, all these organizations, like gathering money, you know, all these things. And, you know, that's what's the first step is. And that's what's been so great about social media and technology, is like now more than ever, we can collect thousands of signatures within a matter of like less than 24 hours. Mm-hmm. And you can show up to whether it be a city council meeting, whether it be whatever you're going to, and show up and be like, we got 6,000 signatures in less than like 6 hours. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to like, you know, then it goes a long way, because it's power in the people of numbers, you know, as they say. So I think at the end of the day, like whether you're fighting a fight that's just about you, try to navigate like as someone who's advocating for you, whether it's something that's bigger than that. You know, round up all the friends you got, collect signatures, do posts, you know, spread the word on social media, and just like, you know, just organize all the people that you can, because that's the only way. And that's what happened to me, is that, you know, I went through a lot, but I didn't go through it alone. And I'm lucky to have said that. I didn't go through it alone. I had advisors, I had friends, I had the Davis community, and that's why I love this school so, so much. We're so lucky, dude, because when I was in community college, they tell me like, oh, everyone's so nice at Davis, right? And you, I don't know if you kind of heard that too in your, where you transferred from, but but you know, everyone was like, oh, like they're so nice at Davis, like it's so like welcoming. I got that from the get-go too, but wow, did Davis students surprise me. They were out, they were out there for me. They were out there ready to, the president from Hope, my really good friend Julia, she's like, so when are we protesting? I had just met her like 2 days ago, and I'm like, wow. She's like, I can help you. And I was like, and she's graduated now, but like, wow, David, when I tell you, I have never met most like La Raza, you, like all the people that are involved in our organization, I have never met a more passionate, more kind-hearted people than I have in the city of Davis, and specifically everyone who goes to UC Davis.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. You know,
never seen students organize like that to like complete strangers, basically. I was a complete stranger, basically, to people. So, and I think we're seeing that happen like in our state now, and hopefully nationwide. And so I think that that's all it takes, is like really getting together with people and showing your humanity. So,
yeah. Well, that's definitely some, you know, a lot of educational and inspiring, you know, things and gems you just dropped right now for the people listening. So, yeah. Again, I just want to thank you so much again, Alex, for taking the time to, you know, chat. Again, it was super inspiring and educational, like I said, and yeah, you know, we definitely got to do this again in the future.
Thank you. Sorry I talk too much.
No. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. It's like I learned so much, you know.
Well, thank you, David. Honestly, it was when you asked me to be part of this, I was like, I've never been in a podcast before. This is gonna be fun.
Yeah.
So I was like, gosh, I hope I don't talk too much, which I ended up talking way too much.
No. I'm like a listener, so I'm just naturally, I love just listening. So.
Oh, nice. Okay, well, thank you so much for having me, David. Let's catch up
course.
soon, though.
Yeah, let's do it. Hopefully this corona goes away and everything, things go back to normal and everyone can see each other again.
Yeah. But good luck with everything. You're killing it too. You organize amazingly. I think that we all inspire each other, and I think that's you know, we take little ideas from each other at the end of the day. So, you know, thanks for all the work you've been doing and all the work you did do at La Raza too, because it set a precedent, it set a foundation.
Yeah, thank you for everything you're doing, you know, with the La Raza. And I'm just really excited, just you mentioned about the financial aid situation you guys are working on. So yeah, and I'm definitely to see, you know, what transpires from there, you know, especially with your experience already dealing with the bureaucracy of the UC system and financial aid and all that, you know. So yeah, I think you bring so much to the table. I know when I learned that, you know, you could be you know, one of the chairs, I was just so excited because I know all the experience you bring and, you know, the knowledge and everything. So yeah, you already see it right now. So yeah, I'm definitely excited to see what you all do as a board.
Thank you. Yeah, we have so much in plan, so we'll keep you updated.
Will do. Well, you have a good rest of your evening, and definitely talk to you later.
Yeah, you too, David.
Yeah, see you.
Bye.
See you.